Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. My name is Jack. Today we've got a very special, gigantic LEGO Star Wars set for you. This is the Death Star 75159, and it's gonna be one huge build. I've got an age recommendation of 14 and up. It is set number 75159, and it has 4,016 pieces. This is essentially just an updated version of the 10188 set, and it's got approximately 200 more pieces than that last one. Included are a whopping 25 minifigures, and frankly there's just too many names to rattle off right now. There's one or two exclusive molds, a few exclusive prints, and I believe both of the droids are brand new. Alright, let's get this box open and see what 4,000 plus pieces looks like in all bags. So here are all of the bags. It's one gigantic mess on the table. I think the numbers are labeled up to number 10, but there's probably 30 all together. We've got one thing for stickers. Out of 4,000 pieces, it's really not that many stickers. And of course, one gigantic ring-bound manual. In here, there's just a ton of steps. And what I'm actually gonna do in order to save time is I'm gonna give half of this manual to Keith in the other room for him to build half the Death Star. And I'm gonna build, I think maybe the second half, I'm not really sure. That's gonna save us a bunch of time, and we're both gonna be able to get to build half of this gigantic, awesome set. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so the Death Star is complete. It was quite a build. I'm really glad that I had Keith helping me out. It took us both quite a while to do. I gotta say, it was simple enough to put it together for the most part, and the only really tricky thing was getting the top half to sort of fit in and get all those studs to line up just right with the bottom half. Other than that, everything was very straightforward, a nice easy build, and there's just a mountain of functions. It's huge. I don't know where we're gonna put this in our studio, but I guess I'm just gonna go through this thing room by room, and along the way I'll introduce some of the minifigs. I suppose starting at the top works and we'll just move our way down. And I guess this first room here is somewhat like a torture or interrogation room. It's one of the more densely packed rooms with quite a lot of things sort of packed into a small space. There we have a function in the corner that actually activates the elevator. Doesn't really have much to do with what the rest of this room is sort of themed on. And right at the bottom there, that is another little toaster droid. On the right hand side, we have a small table with what could be, I guess, a magnifying glass. It's not a magnifying glass piece. And on the other side, we have a bunch of torture tools. Obviously, they're just regular tools, but given the context of the situation, I think this works pretty well. Now this is the table where we have our subject that's getting interrogated. It can bend upwards actually, so they're sort of in a standing position, and underneath is a knob that you can twist. I'll point out what that can do later. And in this room we have the Chewie minifig, so let's just take a look at him really quick. This most recent iteration of Chewie looks pretty good. The mold for the body works well. He comes with a stud shooting crossbow piece, which is the only stud shooting item I think in the entire set. And he even has some handcuffs for playing out some roles in the New Hope. Moving on over one, we've got our Death Star control room. There's a few nice functions in this room. The first one I'm pointing out is this sticker one. There's two sticker details on either side. One shows the coordinates of the Death Star going around the planet, and the other one shows a picture of Alderaan. It slides easily into the panel, so you can play out A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back, depending on what you want. And then we have two posable control consoles. One of them actually moves around the main weapon of the Death Star. The console itself moves as well as this pin in the center, but when we get further down, I'll show how that function works a little bit better. So we have a couple minifigs in this room. First here is C-3PO. Not an exclusive print, but the detailing works really well for this guy. I like the bit of silver on one leg and the matted up wires in the center. And we also get the latest iteration, though still not exclusive version for R2-D2. You know he is the latest version because the indicators on his head are a nice light purple instead of what is usually red. Alrighty then, we are swooshing on over to the meeting room. Pretty sparsely decorated, I have to admit. I guess I like the build for the table. And this is an Emperor Palpatine piece. It's actually not from this set, but it just looks so much better, and I wish they included one of these pieces for the Death Star set. Sorry, that actually came from the Star Destroyer. Okay, and I suppose I'll be introducing the minifigs now. Of course, we've got Darth Vader. Our latest Darth Vader has that cool new helmet piece, which I really like. It comes apart in two spots, and the head printing also matches up a lot better. Certainly makes this minifig a bit taller when he's got the helmet on. Next is Grand Moff Tarkin. I believe we haven't gotten this guy quite in the combination of pieces that he comes in right now. I believe both the hair and headpiece are repeats of Doctor Who, however, but generally I think it's pretty fitting, and both expressions are pretty good. The last minifig I showed off in this room is the Imperial Officer. I really like the expression on this guy, pretty over-the-top sneer, and I also like the printing for the hair or sideburns that kind of goes down the sides. I don't believe we've gotten a combination of these pieces for the officer before, so I think he is exclusive, but I think he's just one of my favorites in the set because of that awesome expression. Alright, and our last room for the top are these two giant defense turrets. They're both decent sort of boxy builds that are attached in tandem, and you can move them side to side in unison, as well as flip the turrets up and down, either by moving the guns by hand, or you can twist a little knob on the side. Pretty decent build though for the turrets, and I'm really glad that they didn't decide to replace these with any spring-loaded shots or stud guns. Now we've got two copies of the Death Star Troopers in this room. I don't believe these guys are unique prints, but I do like the expressions for their faces. One is a relatively friendly looking smirk actually, and then of course we've got our classic sour face. Alright, we've jumped down to the second floor, the biggest floor, and I think these are some of the main bits of display. We've of course got our final duel right here in the Emperor's throne room. There's a couple of play features. You can knock away this bridge here and knock Luke off. Not much more in terms of play. The chair swivels. I really like the detailing for those energy columns there. And we've got a few barrels and a little bit of a walkway on the other edge. And we're checking out all these figs here. The first one is our Return of the Jedi Luke. Not a new minifigure by any means, but the print detailing is pretty hard to improve upon at this point. He's got two very simple expressions, I'd say. And that dark tan hairpiece is probably the most appropriate you can get for him in this scene. Now here's our most recent Emperor, also not a new fig. He's the same one that came out in the final duel set actually, just like Luke, but this guy is a little bit different because now he comes with a soft cloth cape. So technically in a collection he would count as a different release, though the printing and face are no different from what we've seen before. And this exact same idea applies to our Royal Guards. They're the same minifigs in essence as the previous ones, except this time they have soft cloth capes. I do like these minifigures though, they are pretty cool looking. Not too cluttered of a room, but I think it's appropriately detailed. Now the next one up is the Hangar with Darth Vader's TIE Advanced there. And it hangs on this little apparatus that you can twist around with that knob that was in the original interrogation room. Now let's take it off and look at the Advanced on its own for a second. It's got a nice little shape with the build here. I do agree a little bit with the community in that the colors aren't quite as good as the original TIE Advance from the 101-88 set. And though I never got a really close look at how the original TIE Advanced was built, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter here is looking pretty good. You can open it up and he fits inside very snugly, and I think they got the shape working pretty well considering its size. Let's jump back to the Hangar. There's some great details like this circular window on the top here. That is a print, but the detailing for the lights on the sides are stickers. Underneath we have some crates as well as some directional tile stickers with some arrows on them, and a white perimeter for the opening in the hangar as well. The last thing in this room to point out are these blast doors. They have a great little sliding open and close function, but I'll show you how it works on the other side when we switch over. But before we do, let's check out this Naval Officer, probably the simplest detailing out of any of the figs from this set. The colors are almost inverted from what we saw for the Imperial Officer, except this time his face print is not very interesting, and I think he has the exact same hat. And now we're checking out the Death Star's main weapon. A really awesome build for the dish there. I think this is one of the main redesigns from the previous version of the set, and it certainly was an improvement. Behind the dish on one side, we've got a bit of a control console that moves along with the weapon, as well as some blue barrels, and on the other side, we've got another control console that's sort of located a little bit higher up. And you might have guessed that little knob is the function that opens and closes the blast doors for the other room, or I guess between rooms. Now here's a look at what the sort of Death Star apparatus looks like on the other side. It's pretty transparent, a lot of exposed Technic, not the prettiest looking build. And here is the function of the weapon actually moving back and forth with the control console, and this is the dial that you spin in order to move it up and down. It's a pretty nice function, it works very smoothly, and it's definitely a fun play feature. Now you might have noticed the minifigure hanging out down below, and this is the new Han. And by new Han, I mean everything about this guy is the same as at least one other previous guy, except for one simple difference, and that is a brand new mold for the hairpiece. This is the first time we've seen it in Lego. It looks great, it's very, very accurate. I hope we start seeing this piece more often in the future, and I'm pretty darn sure that we're definitely gonna get a Han like this in future Star Wars sets, probably very soon actually. Now let's slide on over to what is one of my favorite scenes in just about any of the Star Wars movies actually, and we've got the prison block. From what I can tell based on pictures of the previous set, nothing has changed about this particular room, or nearly nothing. It doesn't look like much on the outside, which is a little disappointing. It's just a black box, really. We've got some control consoles right in the front. This is where Han is arguing on the other end of the radio. But the reason why we have this ugly black box is so this effect can be made right here. And it's a bit of forced perspective, with the hallway getting narrower as we look down, the walls closing in, and of course it corresponds with the sticker that has the same effect. It looks really good, but it is kind of unfortunate that one of the largest rooms is filled with this huge box that's mostly unsightly, and you really have to look at it at the right angle in order to understand why they did it this way. Also, there's a great little feature here on the edge of the hallway. If you flip the dial, the panel opens, and you can probably guess where that leads to. On the edge of the box, we also have this semi-prison cell door that you can pop off. It's not really built up at all on the inside, but I guess if you wanted to put Princess Leia there or something, you could, and this is where she'd probably get tormented by this creepy droid here. It's a nice build, very simple, but instantly recognizable, and I think that's the most important point. Also, this room has a posable bit of security turrets as well. Just a simple little build. Also in this room, I'm showing off Stormtrooper Han. He's got the same body as the most recent modern Stormtrooper, except of course he comes with the Han face and that new hairpiece once again. All right, and guess what? With that, we've jumped on down to pretty much the bottom floor. Here we're in the trash compactor, obviously, and you can mess around getting the minifigs to stand up properly. And the little lever at the top with the Technic piece allows you to shut the doors. Now you have to make sure that the trash is not catching, because if some of the studs are catching around on the bottom floor, then only one of the walls pushes in, and you have to shift things around, and then eventually, yes, it does all close all the way. I like the build for this trash compactor. It's very simple, and also that big thick door in the back looks really good, and it has a little function where it opens and closes. Now we're looking at Stormtrooper Luke. This is a new hairpiece for him. That is the only thing new about this though. The face printings, I believe, are the exact same as previous Luke's. This is of course a standard Stormtrooper body, and of course inside the trash compactor is the featured build for the Dianaga. It's got a bit of a Loch Ness monster kind of feel to it, almost like there's a turtle shell on its back, but I for one really like the build for this little creature. And let's move on out of this trash compactor altogether. Here's one of the, I guess, reactor cores. This is where Obi-Wan was shutting off the power for the tractor beam. And I gotta say, in the movie this was a big open room, and here there isn't really a whole lot of detail going on. Obviously there's a place to see where you can, put some stormtroopers in case they're observing, but this is extremely simple. I don't think it changed at all from the original, and I gotta say it's a little bit underwhelming. So this minifig here is Obi-Wan. I gotta say, I do prefer the figs that just have the printing for the robes that go down the body, as opposed to the cape pieces that are commonly used for Jedi. Jedis don't really wear capes, but instead have robes around their bodies. For this guy to be improved, it'd be nice if he had sort of dual molded legs. I think that could go super well for him. But right now, I think the detailing for this figure more than suffices. Now here is the standard Stormtrooper. I know we saw some of the bodies on Han and Luke earlier, but this is the trooper himself now. He's got that standard disgruntled clone trooper face. He of course comes with a blaster rifle, and if LEGO can somehow find a way to improve the printing on the body for this Stormtrooper, I would be pretty surprised if they could pull it off. Alright, let's move on over to the leaping area, I guess. This is where there was no bridge to get across, and there's a pretty simple function here with the rope. You can guess you just knock Luke off, or Leia off, and they're supposed to swing across. I think this function works best with a bit of imagination, but the room itself here is actually built pretty well. There are several openings and doors where you can place stormtroopers for them to be shooting at, which is kind of how the movie was. And I like that these doors also sort of match up with the Obi-Wan room and some of the other rooms in sort of a realistic way. This particular one is pretty sparse, but that's how it was in the movie. And it's interesting that we have this sort of barrier along the bottom here. I guess the designers wanted to keep some sort of presence of spherical shape, even though this section is very wide open. All right, and introducing Leia, the new Leia. I believe the print for the face is the same, though that is a new hair mold and a new print for the body. This is the first new print we've had for her princess outfit for quite a long time in LEGO. It's a simple dress, but there's a lot more detail added to it, and I for one definitely welcome the change. And here is the new Luke. I believe yet again the only new part of this is the hairpiece for him, and everything else I think is a reprint. Both good minifigs, and let's move on. Moving on to the last of the rooms. This isn't something that you ever see in the movies, I don't think at least. And I think it's some sort of equipment and loading zone. The main feature is this sort of Technic crane, and I like that they use the yellow Technic pieces for this. It's a nice little posable claw that keeps its shape pretty well, and we've also got this other thing that kind of looks like a larger toaster droid, and inside is some equipment. You can even see that's an old bullhorn piece, back when blasters used to be just bullhorn pieces with the trans stud on there, and I find it interesting that they didn't bother to update what was on the inside. You can see that they definitely added some long blaster rifles. And here's what really makes this a loading zone. We've got another elevator. This time it just goes up to the next floor. And when you turn this little crank, you can deliver supplies straight to the hangar. Not a bad little function. It works really well, actually. This minifigure is labeled as the Death Star droid, but I believe this is an RA7 protocol droid. And this head mold is actually what the original protocol droid was supposed to look like back from the 2008 version of this set. So it's nice to see that they actually got the RA7 head on this version. Now I know I said this room was the last one, and that was a lie. This is actually the last main room, and it is yet another big gun. And I also said there weren't any other spring-loaded shooters, and that too was not true. This has 2 spring-loaded shots. The firing function works very well, and I really do like the detailing for this gun. It looks great on both sides. The gunners have 2 tiny little control pads here, and there's of course space for extra spring-loaded shots on the wall. We're now taking a look at both of the Death Star gunner minifigs. I like that little bit of detailing that's just on the sides of their helmets. They have pretty solemn faces printed on with a little bit of a headset, and they're solid looking figs for sure. I just like that helmet. It's technically the last room, but it's not really a room, it's just the basement. There isn't really much down here aside from maybe a couple of barrels. There's a banister, and there's the Astromech Droid. I guess the only other function that's worth mentioning is that the elevator from the very top floor can indeed reach all the way down here. But anyways, let's check out this Astromech Droid. We've never had one of these guys in this nice blue color here. Technically, this is an Imperial Astromech Droid. What's interesting to note is that the panel detailing on the front of the body has been somewhat simplified. A lot of the same shapes are in the same places, but instead of quite a lot of intricate panel detailing, we've just got some solid metallic boxes, mostly. It's a nice little change up. Usually the prints are very similar, but this one feels just a little bit more different than your average Astromech. All right, and I think that is the entire set. We just went through all of the different rooms, we checked out all the minifigs, and there has been quite a bit of upheaval from the LEGO community about this set being released as sort of an updated version of a pre-existing one, the 10188 Death Star set. But I'm so glad that I never built that one and I sort of discovered everything on this updated version. I'm convinced that this set was re-released because A, it's a great set and it probably does very well on the shelves, and B, Rogue One is just around the corner, and that's a movie that's basically all about the Death Star. I'm not entirely sure what all of the build updates were between this new one and the old set. Some of the updates I know what they are, but for the most part I'm happy to kind of leave everything a little bit ambiguous, because at the end of the day I just really enjoy this set. I feel like it's one of the few sets that kids and adults can kind of enjoy equally. Now, if you have the original Death Star set, I would say there's probably not very much that's changed aside from some of the minifigs, of which most of them will not remain exclusive. A lot of these are classic characters, and you can guarantee that most of them are going to be appearing in other sets probably in the very near future. So I definitely wouldn't recommend getting this set if you are just interested in exclusive figs, but instead this set is sort of an ultimate accumulation of classic Star Wars scenes. All right, that's it for this episode, everybody. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe. I have left a link in the video description below if you want to buy the set. And that's pretty much it. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.